Good morning, everyone. I am Clarice Anen Serrano. On behalf of Group 2, I would like to start our presentation entitled A Risk Management Study of Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School. So, education is the main focus of our industry analysis. The three education systems in the Philippines are primary, secondary, and tertiary level. Secondary level consists of lower and upper level. The primary level is from kinder to grade 6. The lower level, secondary level, is from grade 7 to 10, and the upper secondary level is from grade 11 to 12. The two types of schools are public and private. Public schools are usually government-funded institutions that provide free and accessible learning. On the other hand, private schools are usually owned by private companies or Christian churches. Also, their income mostly comes from the tuition fees paid by the parents. The difference between public and private school is that public school has a bigger classroom size since it accommodates more students compared to private school. Also, lack of facilities and equipments can be experienced in public schools. So the total number of public school in the Philippines from kinder to grade 12 is 47,421. On the other hand, the total number of private schools in the Philippines is 13,256. When it comes to curriculum and code of ethics, both public and private school is aligned with the Department of Education. So when it comes to technology, before the pandemic, both public and private use a traditional way of learning where all activities and lectures are done face-to-face. However, when the pandemic started, the lack of technology and computer literacy made it hard for public school students to cope with online learning. Rather than mostly from the private schools who easily managed to adapt from the changes.
Thank you for that, Ms. Serrano, for giving us an overview of our industry analysis, which is an academic or educational industry. Now let's go for the specific part, which is our group have chosen Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School. It was originally built in Santo Niño and it's moved to Vista Hermosa in 1997. The land in Vista Hermosa, which is where the school is standing right now or established, is a commemoration of Jose Paeng Diaz to his father Jose Pepeng Diaz. That is why it's named Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School. This school has a 37 faculty members and 1,339 students as of current enrollee or enrolled for this school year. And now, our group have went on site to the Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School in order to properly identify the risks and see what the school actually looks like on site. And the following slides would show these pictures that is actual taken by us in Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School. After everyone have watched or seen the images that we have for the on-site of Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School, let us now proceed to the profile of our interviewee. If you would remember, for the images showed in the past or previous slides, we have interviewed this person in the library/clinic of the school. His name is J.V. N. Fontaniel. He is 26 years old and his position for the school is Deputy Chief And second, the SDRRM, which stands for School Disaster Risk Reduction Management Coordinator of the school. His years of service is around 6 years with the combination of his teaching in the private school before he moved to the public school. He graduated in bachelor's degree of English on the April 2017. And now, let us proceed to the risk identification of our firm that we have chosen. The following images would show the best, or not actually the best, or the most obvious risks that we have identified as a group on site.
Risk identification. Upon visiting the school of Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School and conducting an interview with Mr. J.B.N. Fontaniel, the risks identified by the researchers are mostly the risks founded affecting the operations and quality of the school educations, which are the following. Human resource risk. The risk that comes with a school personnel like their skills. Succession risk. Risk that arises from changing of school administration. Availability risk. Risk of lacking school equipment and facilities for the students. Weather risk. The risk of class or event disruptions because of calamity exposed. Force majeure risk. The possibility of encountering unanticipated events that might affect the school operations. Operational risk. The risk of encountering delays and malfunctions of the school operations due to unexpected events. Failure of utilities. The risk of encountering sudden disruptions of utilities. Technology risk. Lack of learning or modern opportunity of the students due to scarcity of technological or laboratory equipment. Regulatory risk. Risk of not being able to follow the school calendar because of sudden suspensions by the government. Well, the next 6 risks came from the area of the school and school ground itself, which are the following. Location risk. Risk arises due to the school location. Environmental risk. Risk arises surrounding the school. Design risk. This involves the initial plan where the building was established and also the material used to build the structure. Usage risk. The risk associated with limiting the capability of the infrastructure. Construction risk. The risk of school facilities being constructed poorly. Ground condition risk. Risk arises due to the slippery floors that can lead to accidents. Other identified risks are the following. Reputational risk. The risk of a school getting involved in a controversial issue. Physical risk. These are the situations that may injure or directly harm people like bullying. Illegal use of substance risk. This involves the people using illegal drugs such as marijuana and shabu. Crime exposure risk. The risk of encountering and exposing the students to crimes such as kidnapping. Lastly, health risk. Risk that arises because of students and school personnel not getting their COVID-19 vaccine. This is the figure 1 or source of risk chart. As we can see, there are 35% strategic, 25% tactical, 35% operational, and 5% legal from the identified risk. So under strategic, there are location risk, human resource risk, succession risk, environmental risk, design risk, availability risk, and usage risk. While in tactical, there are construction risk, weather risk, reputational risk, force majeure risk, and physical risk. Under operational, there are illegal use of substance risk, crime exposure risk, operational risk, ground condition risk, failure of utilities, health risk, and technology risk. While in legal, there is only one, which is the regulatory risk. This data found out that this public school firm, specifically Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School, that their sources of risk generally came from long-term decisions and day-to-day basis operations. This is followed by the risk to occur occasionally, such as weather risk and force majeure risk. The remaining 5% are legal compliance that came from the regulatory risk that affect the school calendar, such as class suspensions.
As shown in the figure, the study identified the risk of JFD Memorial National High School. 55% came from the internal environments such as usage risk, where we saw the lack of classrooms available for students. On the other hand, the 45% came from the external environments such as the failure of utilities caused by the trucks passing through the nearby roads that hits the power cable connected to the school. All in all, this indicates that the environment between internal and external in Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School is almost balanced.
And now, let us proceed with the school departments involved with the risks identified in Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School. It is divided with two different parts, the administrative and the operations. First, the administrative has this 47% and operations has 53%. Why is this? Administrative and operations, we base this to STOC, which is the strategic, tactical, operational, and compliance. Most of our identified risks, or lots of our identified risks, are under the strategic and tactical. And these two are entirely connected with the administrative or the top management. And secondly, the operations part. There is a lot, since there is a 53% of the company risks identified that is involved with the school departments, which is a 53% in operations. And these 53% are divided to different parts or departments of the company, such as the clinic, the IT, the security, and the maintenance of the school.
Now let's go to the risk categories. The risk category figure shows that the most affected of the loss exposure from the identified risk in the study is the people. Having 50% score, it is most exposed from the risk such as physical risk, health risk, and crime exposure risk. Coming in the second is the premises, having 31%, which is mainly the design or infrastructure of the school. Coming in the third with an average of 13% is the process, which are the risks that directly affect the operation of the school. Lastly, 6% comes from the service. It indicates that the risk that halt the service, such as class suspensions and lack of technology or equipment in the school. And for the measurement and analysis of loss exposure, the risk measurement and analysis are based on the current level of risk exposure in Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School. It assesses how likely or the chance of the risk occurs, the loss severity of the risk, the loss frequency, the overall rating of the risk, and how much it can affect the school. The figure 5 shows that the result of assessment of the likelihood turns out that 30% of risk are unlikely or have a low chance, and another 30% are possible, and only 20% of the identified risks are likely to occur in the school. The figure 6 shows the measurement of loss severity. While the result of loss severity is based on how much damage it can create, the result of the loss severity assessment from the schools turns out that 60% of the risks are very high, 30% is high, 5% for moderate, and 5% turns out low. This means that the majority of the risk assessed can severely affect the school. The figure 7 shows the loss frequency assessment. This is how often the risks occur in the school. It turns out that 50% of the identified risks are moderate, 25% risks are high, 20% are low, and only 5% of the identified risk result are very high.
The overall rating based on the result of the likelihood, severity, and the frequency of the identified risk. According to the assessment, identified risk resulting in 40% of the moderate, 40% are high, 15% are very high, and 5% are low can affect the school. Lastly, the priority level of the risk focuses on how urgent and important to resolve the problems. It turns out that 50% of the identified risks are urgent and very important, 40% of the risks are both urgent and important, and lastly, 10% of the risks are very urgent and important. Due to the location and budget of the school, many risks are found as the school is in a nearby river in a rural area, resulting in many risk exposure. The school has ongoing construction, but most of the buildings are old and there is not enough budget to renovate all of the buildings. One of the risks is the environment that can affect the well-being of both students and the employees.
Next is our identification of loss exposure. We have three primary strategies or techniques of identifying the loss exposure available in CFDS Memorial National High School. First is the inspection, which is the 50%. Why is it a lot? Why is it so big percentage of techniques or identification of loss exposure? First, mainly loss exposure treatment using inspection is all about observing. It's all about knowing things tangibly, physically, and most of the risks available in CFTS Memorial National High School is very tangible and directly affects the students. Thereof, only through inspection, they would see this loss exposure exposed enough to know through inspecting or observing. Next is the brainstorming. 45% are brainstorming, as it means many times, especially for example, a succession risk or changing in roles, choosing the curriculum or subjects or grades, people brainstorms. It's teachers, the faculty, the senior positions, they brainstorm along with each other and together in order to identify these risks. Lastly, the dependency analysis, which is the 5% in the least amount. Hi, let us now proceed with the risk response of our group. First, what are these datas? These datas are the approach of the Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School to the risks identified. First is 85% of treat. These are the risks that they would treat and will decide to treat in order to remove this risk. One good example is that when we go or went on site, we saw that there are plenty of construction and fixing of ground conditions, having a relationship with the students, a good relationship with the students, from teacher to student relationship, are just some of the approach of the school in order to treat the risks they have identified, to make it proportionate with each other. Next would be the 10% transfer and 5% tolerate. This 5% tolerate is, one example is the storm. Because, or the trucks that is coming from their place. The environment, because they cannot do anything about it, most specifically environment and the weather. They could avoid it, but treating it is sounds pretty hard. That's why they just rather tolerate it, since it doesn't really affect them that much. And if it does, they would just avoid it.
This index the figure depict the department responsible for managing the specific business risk. Identify the study. The administrative department are responsible for strategic risk management, with the clinic, security, operation, and IT department are responsible for operation and technical risk management. The data reveal that 45% of the department are responsible for managing reputational risk, with 30% are responsible for infrastructure risk management, 15% for financial risk management, and 10% for marketplace risk management. Attitude of risk. Based on the risk assessment analysis result for Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School, it's as being determined that regulatory risk, design risk, location risk, crime exclusion risk, and ground condition risk pose on grade test threat onto the school. The analysis also revealed that 9% of stockholders are in the comfort zones and 29% are in the contentious zone. 43% are in the consentinate zone and 19% are in the critical zone. To the effectively management this risk, the school administration should be develop a risk management plan that including risk mitigation, strategic risk transfer, option risk acceptance, critical and risk monitoring and responsible framework. Additionally, clear risk management role and responsibilities should be stabilized said and securities that should be accolated accordingly by the taking approaching the approach to the risk management. The school can minimize the impact of risk, ensuring the safety and well-being the students, staff, and stakeholders. A crucial to all zone.
And now, as we proceed to the recommendation of our group to our chosen firm Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School, we have used a pattern FIRM, which is financial, infrastructure, reputational, and marketplace, as a pattern for our recommendation to them. And now, let's proceed to our recommendation F, which is financial. First and foremost, they should have this vulnerability to their funds, allocations of budget or money, and a list or like financial statement of how they use the money. As our interview we have mentioned that there is a risk of, or we have found out that there's a risk of discrepancy and changes to the data as given to the upper management, or let's say distributed to the upper management, about the budget or funds used on each departments. There is no exact amount of how much they have used. They just give an estimation, but not knowingly or having a concrete evidence that this is the exact amount of money that has been used. This is why they should have more vulnerability with each other, especially in terms of financial and funds or budget. And with this, if they have found out that there is more excess or extra money, they could use it for another event or another reasons for the school. Next would be the investment of sports, because as identified by our interviewee, they are engaging with sports. Therefore, they should also have invest more money with these request funds to LGUs that in order to improve more of these parts or the skills, talents, future of the students. And lastly, investing in the school service. Sir J.V. Fontanel have mentioned plenty of risks on external part of the school, like students going outside and students having school activities, sports activities that is going to a very far place. They would much need a school service, a van. They would need this in order to attain or solve many risks identified, most specifically with in terms of financial, buying something that addressing something using the computations of these countings, finances. So for our financial recommendation, invest in school service, invest in academic and sports field of the school, and lastly, become more vulnerable with their financial statements.
The researchers have 5 recommendations under infrastructure of Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School. First, perform a quarterly to annual building inspection. Since most buildings of Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School are old, some parts of the school may not be safe to use. That's why we are recommending to perform a quarterly to annual building inspection to ensure that the school structural and electrical are complying to the safety standard and prevent the possible problems like building collapse or electricity hazards. Second, perform a regular school facility maintenance. As per our visit to the school, there are a lot of uneven surfaces that might cause minor accidents for the students. The interviewee also added that broken windows are a result of the heavy winds that usually occur to their location. That's why it is important to conduct regular facility maintenance to ensure that the school premises are safe to walk by the students and preventing the chances of someone to get hurt. Third, strict inspection for students and outsiders coming in and out of the school. As we visit, we never saw the security guard personnel inspecting the bag of the students. It is important for the management to tighten their security and implement a stricter inspection before entering the school grounds to avoid entering of illegal substances inside the school premises. Fourth, adding security personnel. It is vital for the school community to hire an additional security to improve the safety of the school community and to minimize and prevent crime exposure in the school premises. Lastly, security personnel training. It is important for security personnel to undergo security training to effectively perform their duties and to be able to be ready to deal with emergency situations and to protect the students and teachers around the school premises.
For the researchers' recommendation under the reputational, Jose F. Diaz Memorial National High School must draft and strictly impose a sanction for those students who make misconduct behavior. It is important for the student who commit gross misconduct to be sanctioned and reprimanded by the school. By doing so, the student will think twice to commit a mistake or harm other students. It will also maintain the school's reputation. Another is to create workshops or training programs to improve students' performance when it comes to academics and sports. It is important that the student have access to programs that will help them to improve their talents. By doing so, the student will have a prior advantage in winning and representing the school.
Marketplace, the most important details are the school, most improving the risk management by improving their social media presence, increasing reputation and community awareness of this service will be lead increasing customer retention and prospect as well as improving customer retention and prospect and the school as quality personnel from senior management to operate, but there is room and improvement as a proper assessment. Then strategic planning, the customer satisfaction and stakeholders will be improve the performance and position in the market. That's all. Thank you for listening. Now open for questions.
And for the last but not the least, the conclusion. In this study, we have found out that there is a balance of strategic and operationals as the most sources of the risk. Thus, the long-term decisions of the school, such as its design or infrastructure, greatly affects the sources of the risks available in the study. Second, since public schools offer services, day-to-day operations are also the great sources of risks. In this study, we have found out that the SDRRM is doing more than 80% of treatment to the identified risks. Since the researchers, have went on-site to the school, we have found out that it is actually true that majority of the identified risks are proportionate to what the risk management of the school is doing, and they are actually treating majority of the available risks. It is also found out that majority of the affected category of the available risk are people. We have concluded and recommended that adding more guards, adding more seminars that would make The students, the teachers, and especially the parents for the external and internal risks available would be avoided since people are the most subjected to the loss exposure. Lastly, we have found out that majority of the risks are not urgent but very important to be addressed. Therefore, it is concluded that they don't have to take it too fast. However, it must be done accordingly. It must be identified and treated accordingly.